Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from New York City on the Upper West Side, this is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast. Today I'm your host, Kaustubha Das. And once again, we're going without our co-host, Raghunath, who is on the West Coast promoting his brand new book, From Punk to Monk. From Punk to Monk, does it have some subtitle? Punk to Monk?
I don't think so.
A memoir.
A memoir.
A memoir. A very fascinating memoir of a very fascinating man who has led a very fascinating life and is sharing with us his very fascinating teachings, including the Calcutta Book Fair story, which I'm not going to get into, but it's there in the book.
It is in the book. I can't believe it made it. There's a lot that got cut out, but not the Calcutta Book Fair story.
Yeah, what were the editors thinking, leaving that in? It's been a mystery on this show for years. We've alluded to it, but never directly spoke of it.
I think you've actually made it famous or infamous.
Well, that's the thing. Now it's a selling point.
Yeah.
Now you have to buy the book. But once you read the story, you may be sorry that you did, but still you have to. The Calcutta Book Fair story. Okay. Good to be with you here this morning, Mara. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks.
Things are okay on the farm?
Yeah, they're doing good.
The animals are okay without Raghunath?
They are. The animals really run the house over here. You know how it is.
I know. They just come. Those sheep, I remember last time I was there, they would just come up, hang out. They kind of choose where they want to go.
Yeah, those sheep are... I'm at war with them right now because they're eating the tulips as they're coming up.
Well, they have to eat
get them
too.
Fenced. I know, but they seem to really like the tulips a lot.
I bet they do. Yeah, you got to build a little fence there.
Yeah.
Okay. So today we don't have Raghunath, but we are bringing back our special guest, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, and we'll bring him on just after announcements. Mary, do you have any announcements for today?
I do. We have the Spring Wisdom of the Sages retreat up here is now, registration is open. And that's on our website, wisdomofthesages.com/events.
Mm-hmm.
We have Cult of Cain, Josh Kane's asana class for our Patreon members today at 10:30.
It's Friday, yeah.
Yeah. We have Bhakti Recovery Group meetings at 12:30 and 1 today. And there's no show tomorrow, but we'll be back on Sunday at 8 a.m. with special guests.
Yeah, the special guests will be Danya and Kula Pradeep, and we're going to get into mental health issues, which is probably something I should have gotten into a long time ago. Yeah, mental health and how it relates to Bhakti, and these are two professionals in the field as well as two very sincere senior Bhakti yoga practitioners. So their thoughts on this will be very interesting. So please come in. That's 8 a.m. on Sunday. And now we'll welcome Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Welcome back, my friend.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for waking up. Where are you right now? You're in California or in Seattle or something?
Yeah, San Jose, same place as yesterday.
Oh, that's right. San Jose. That's where you are. So you're waking up very early to be with us. Oh, you're an early waker anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's get right into the Bhagavatam. I'll chant our opening shlokas and we'll get into it. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual masters have opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in Canto 7, Chapter 7. And I think yesterday we read, I think the last verse we read was, did we read 31, 32?
No, we haven't read 30, 31.
Oh, I'm sorry, 30, 31. So we read 39. Oh, yeah. We read 39. And I want to check something. Okay. So I'm sorry, we read 29.
Right.
Okay. And so 29, well, I'm going to read it again just so that I know where I'm at. It said of the different processes. Oh, yeah. Okay. And of course, this is a theme in Bhagavatam that it's just so central to the Bhagavatam's message that there are so many different practices or processes listed in and expanded upon in Vyasadeva's works. But here we have within the Bhagavatam, it's going to keep shining light on the process of Bhakti Yoga. It's going to keep not only shining light on it, but carefully establishing how special, unique, and important it is, and that it is the culmination of all the other practices, that they all build towards this, that they all work towards this, that this is where the full evolution of the soul's potential is met, that this is where one finds, in the words of the Bhagavatam itself, one finds Atma Supersiddhiti, the complete satisfaction of the soul. So Prahlad is telling his little young friends of the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life. So many are there. The one personally explained and accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be considered all perfect. That process is the performance of duties, by which, what happens? Does one find material prosperity and blessings? No. Does one find freedom from material suffering and ultimate peace? No. And well, those things are found, but it's not, doesn't stop there. The real thing, the real goal, the final conclusion, the full manifestation is that by which love for the Supreme Lord develops. And the word used there was rati. We spoke a little bit about that. Now we'll read text 30 and 31. Are you ready, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Or I'm sorry, now we're, 30 and 31. And in the commentary to that verse 29, Prabhupada wrote this. He said, as soon as one is situated on the platform of Bhakti Yoga, the root cause of one's suffering and material bondage is destroyed. This is clearly explained in the next verse, which gives the secret of success. So if you want to know what is the secret of success in spiritual life, that will be shared in this next two verses put together. Text 30 and 31. Here goes little Prahlad speaking to his friends. He says, one must accept the bona fide spiritual master. Some of this stuff could be pretty triggering, I think, when we hear some of this stuff. Because when you hear how it's described, the traditional understanding of how one relates to a guru. We'll read about it here. One must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto them with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possessions, whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master. And in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord with faith, glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on the Lord's lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of Shastra, the sacred text, and Guru. Okay, so here we're hearing about the secret of success. It has to do with one's connection with a master in this, right? You're offering everything to them. You're offering your possessions. You're offering your whatever you have. Commonly we say you're offering your body and your mind and your words. Here it's saying everything that you possess, you're meant to offer to this person. Sounds a little scary. Do you have any initial thoughts on that, Chaitanya Charan, before we dip into the commentary?
Yes.
Okay.
It's two sides over here. One is that spirituality is very personal. So it's a personal relationship, and it's personal relationship based on love. When say two people are having a deep loving relationship, then it's like one person wants to give themselves to the other person. So everything that I have is mine, your wish is my command. Those kind of sentiments, they arise from a deep sense of love. We appreciate them as wonderful. But at the same time, we see that kind of sentiment can also lead a person down a blind alley or dark alley. A person can be manipulated, a person can be abused. So there is this check and balance that is there, and that is one needs to study and equip one's intelligence. So, and the whole relationship between the guru and disciple is also based on the guru educating and enlightening the disciple. So one key difference between education and indoctrination is that education is about how to think, whereas indoctrination is about what to think. And we see that in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna is God, is the ultimate guru, Krishna Vande Jagat Guru. And yet he does not dictate to Arjuna. He educates Arjuna. So that is the broad mood. And because that educational, rational, philosophical component is there, that is an inherent, we could say, inherent check and balance in the system of directing our love towards the guru and through the guru towards the divine.
I see. I suppose that there's always, when we read these texts, there's so many challenges there. There's challenge in any kind of teaching being handed down. What to speak, just even say in modern time, what to speak of if we're taking texts that are from thousands of years ago in a different language, from a different culture. To translate their meaning, the essential meaning of them is going to be a challenge. And that's why so much emphasis is given on this parampara, that it be handed down in this chain, this link of, not only a link of messengers, but a link of people that live and understand the message so that they can hand it down in such a way where it fully translates. So that's challenging enough. But I suppose there's another challenge in there that you mentioned, love here. That particularly in the realm of love, there's vulnerability, that it really requires opening your heart and giving of yourself. And so whenever we do that, there's always it's in one sense, it opens the door for some sort of exploitation, like when parents see that their child is falling in love with someone, they're like, in one sense, they want them to love, but in another sense, they're a little afraid, is this person going to hurt them? Is there we commonly hear, these things like where the father's telling the boyfriend, if you hurt this girl in any way, I'm gonna, you are in big trouble, So when one opens up, there's always that possibility. Here it's talking about within the realm of the guru and the disciple. And, unfortunately, it's a world where we do, we've seen so much exploitation, particularly, I would say, especially as it's come to the West, that a lot of people lose faith in these, in the way that these texts describe that relationship, because they do speak in a language that's like saying, you must give yourself to this person fully. One must accept the bona fide spiritual master. I have to do that? Well, yes. And render service unto him with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possessions, one should be offered to the spiritual master. I'm supposed to give them my bank account? I'm supposed to turn over? What am I supposed to do here? Let's read Prabhupada's commentary and see where he goes with this. He says, in the previous verse, it has been said that the process which immediately increases one's love and affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process by which you develop that rati, that divine love, which is the goal of Bhakti Yoga, that process is the best of the many thousands of ways to become free from the entanglement of material existence. Okay, so there's many different yoga paths. They're all aimed at becoming free from the entanglement of material existence. But here it's being said that the one that has to do with this divine love is the best of them. It is also said, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. This is from Mahabharata. This is saying that, well, we'll read as Prabhupada says. He says that actually the truth of dharma, the truth of religious principles, dharmasya, is extremely confidential. It's very hard to ascertain. Even as there in the books, it can be difficult to put one's finger on. Nonetheless, it can be understood very easily if one actually adopts the principles of dharma. As it is said, dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam. The process of religion, or the process of dharma, is enunciated by the Supreme Lord, because he is the supreme authority. Okay, now this is all sounding, just off the bat, it's all sounding, it definitely has a ring of a very kind of dogmatic kind of idea here. Okay, there's one must accept. Here are the principles. They're given by God. They're enunciated directly. It continues. This is indicated in the previous verse by the word bhagavatoditaha. The injunctions or directions of the Lord are infallible, and their benefits are fully assured according to his directions, which are explained in this verse. The perfect form of dharma is bhakti yoga. Okay, so first of all, it mentioned that this is confidential, that it's hard to understand, that it is, I suppose you can say something that's confidential. It's not revealed to everyone. It's who it's revealed to depends on a choice or some qualification. Could you speak to that at all, Prabhu? The idea how this is confidential?
Yeah, it's a very good contextualization of these statements, though.
Yeah.
So now, I think in Bhakti, there is a principle of reciprocity that Krishna talks about. Ye thamam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. That the way we open our heart, to that extent, he reveals himself to us. And even the relationship with the Guru is also like that. That in one sense, Krishna is our heart, or I can say our heart is close to Krishna, but our heart is also closed to Krishna. So,
Okay.
so it's a gradual process of his proximity is there, but we don't realize that proximity of the divinity within us.
Okay.
The heart needs to be opened. And the more the heart is opened, the more that relationship flows. So So the idea of offering ourselves, offering everything, that is, it's not an immediate demand that in the first day one opens one's heart and offer one's entire being. It is an ideal, it is an aspiration that in love that is pure, love that is selfless, love that is fully reciprocated with, we will not be hesitant, will not hold ourselves back.
Mm-hmm.
But the same traditions tell also that shanai, gradually, step by step, an incremental approach. So, okay, what can I do right now? So whether it's mantra chanting, whether it's studying sacred texts, and when we talk about the process of following bhakti, it is gradual and incremental. That the student and the teacher, both of them, they mutually earn each other's trust. So it's not just the disciple has to trust the spiritual master, but the spiritual master also, the master, the guru, the teacher also uh, trust the disciple. So it's a bond that develops gradually.
Uh-huh.
That's one thought, and that the gradual development depends on the reciprocation.
Okay, this is helpful. You know, in a similar way, like sometimes, well, here's a principle, or here's a fundamental idea that one can always reach to when they're reading something and it sounds very alien, or there's some fear maybe about misapplication, how this could be so easily misapplied, is that we will find these statements that are perhaps triggering or concerning within these texts. But if we continue to look at these texts, we're going to find other statements that will help us contextualize them or help fully explain the topic. So for instance, like say with karma, you know, the idea that for every activity that we do, there's a reaction to it. Therefore, my current circumstances have been determined or influenced by my previous actions. Okay, that's an interesting idea. That's now we're saying that in one sense, I'm responsible for my circumstances. One way to interpret that, one way to run with that is to say, well, let me be very careful how I treat everyone. Because if I treat people with any cruelty in some callous way, then that's coming back at me. If I cheat others, I'll be cheated, you know, etc. But another way that one could interpret it is to saying, well, now what you're saying is that anybody that's in any unfortunate position, it's their own fault. And even if they're actively being exploited by someone, well, we should just ignore that because they brought it upon themselves and nothing needs to be done to correct this. So really the fault lies not with the oppressor, but with the victim. Now you're victim blaming. And so one could say it could be interpreted that way, or it could be, let's say, misapplied that way. But if we look further into these same texts that are speaking about karma, they're also speaking about the necessity to practice compassion, right? Like that must always be there. So along with these teachings of karma come the teachings of compassion. And so that every living being should be dealt with and understood through compassion. And so now if we apply them both together, we have a system that works. But if you try to take it without that, if you try to take the teachings of karma without the teachings of compassion, then it's very likely that you're going to misapply it. And it becomes a vehicle or a tool for further suffering rather than for relieving suffering. So you shared that in a similar way. You're speaking to this, that yes, it can be concerning that we're going to give everything to this person, but this is something that you don't walk in the door and do tomorrow. This is something that's gradually developing, that the two are kind of getting to know each other and understand each other before there's such a full-on loving circumstance. You know, it's you're giving yourself entirely when you marry someone, you know, but generally we don't encourage people to jump into that. We encourage them to spend a little time and get to know each other first. Right?
Yeah, karma is an excellent example of this contextualization. That generally, when we look at these Western any statements from these texts, they are all a part of a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
it's just if you take one statement out of it, Like taking the example of a husband and a wife or two people in a close relationship. So when they are making suppose they are having a conversation with each other, and then within that, when they make one statement, that statement, if it's not seen in the context, they may see what's going on over here. So sometimes, especially scripture, if anything that triggers us, like karma, it's one explanatory framework that is available. But generally, when we are dealing with others, our focus, if somebody is in distress, our focus should never be what was their karma. Our focus needs to be what is my dharma, not what they have done in the past because of which they are suffering. It is what is the right thing for me to do now. Say suppose a doctor sees a patient admitted in the emergency due to maybe taking maybe a drug overdose. Now the doctor, in the back of their mind, is aware, this person took drugs and because of which they suffer. But the doctor's focus is not why did this person take drugs? What a stupid person.
Yeah.
Doctor's focus is what can I do? Now, as a part of educating the patient so that that kind of incident or crisis doesn't recur, the doctor will at the right time tell that this kind of drug overdose is not good. But the point is to help. That's why seva is such an important thing. Any religious tradition or any sacred statements, if the mood of service is taken away, any statement can become a hammer with which to beat others down.
Sure.
So that's same. The guru is the spiritual master and disciple. The relationship is there. There is a mood of service over there, and that mood of service is lost. Then a lot is lost through that.
Yeah. Okay. And therefore, the doctor has to take certain vows that this is how they will operate. They'll always operate to relieve suffering, et cetera, et cetera. That's there. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned doctor, because I was also thinking in terms of some of the language of these texts, as well as the language of Srila Prabhupada's commentaries. In one sense, I do think that it is speaking to a different culture. So people from like the Western world, it can, like they say, you have a cat and you pet it in the wrong direction, you go the fur against the grain, and it's like it's rough, it's disturbing, some of this language, to the Western ear, it sounds dogmatic. Whereas I think there is a different culture in the East, even to this day. I'll give you and you mentioned doctor, so I'll give you an example. Like the impression that I get in India is that when you go to the doctor, the patient, I get the impression that doctors are less used to being questioned by the patients in India as they are in America. Like it's kind of like the patient in India has confidence that the doctor is so much better informed than them on this, that there's just a kind of a natural openness to the doctor's orders. Whereas like in the West, it's kind of like, well, why this, why that, why, And so sometimes like, I'll go to the Bhakti Vedanta hospital and I'll be, digging into to try to understand something better. And sometimes I get a little bit of feeling like they're almost like, why is he asking so many questions? I have the answers to this. Why doesn't he just accept them? And so when we hear some of this, I think it is speaking a bit to another culture. Prabhupada just saying, you must do this, you must do that, you must do that. And the Bhakti text speak to that. Now as this commentary continues, Srila Prabhupada, he said, well, first of all, let's talk about this confidentiality. He said that this is very confidential information. This is an interesting topic. Then next, he's going to talk about how one can pass through that door, that gate of confidentiality. That's about to come, and he's going to go to a certain text to speak to that, which is Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But first, let's discuss this idea of confidentiality. It's saying that this understanding, this very personal understanding of divine love, there's many practices, there's many methods of yoga, but this one is confidential, he's saying. This one is harder to access. Fewer can access. There's some qualification. There's some entry point that one needs to pass through to understand this, even though it's right there in the books. You can just pick up the book and read about it. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and in several places, he's going to say, Arjuna, now I'm going to speak to you something confidential. He'll use the word guyam, like in text 9.1 of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, this is guyatamam. This is the most confidential knowledge, right? In text in the 15th chapter, he says, the last verse of the 15th chapter, he says, what I just shared with you, Arjuna, past few verses that I just spoke, this is guyatamam shastram. This is the most confidential part of all of the Vedic scriptures, of all the sacred texts, How does one understand it? He'll define that too. What is the door to that confidential knowledge? How does one pass through it? Is it the kind of things we'd find in other paths of yoga? Does one need to be very austere? Does one need to be very renounced? Perhaps one needs to be born in the right family so that they've learned everything and developed passed through all the right samskars, all the right rites and rituals, so that they will understand this knowledge. Does it have to do with birth? Does it have to do with intelligence? What is it that grants one that access? And Krishna he'll say different things, but it has nothing to do with those externals. It has to do with the state of one's heart. In 9.1, he says, I'm going to speak this most confidential knowledge that you'll be able to understand, Arjuna, because you are anusuyave, because you have no animosity, no enviousness within your heart. Therefore, you'll be able to understand this. Or in the 4th chapter, he says that I'm going to speak to you this rahasyam uttamam, this greatest mystery, this greatest secret. Why to you, Arjuna? Because bhakto sime sakacheti, because you're my devotee and you're my friend, because your heart is in the right place. You'll be able to access this. You'll be able to understand this. Why here? Because we're talking about it's very personal, and it has to do with love. And so it doesn't matter, renunciation is not important, learning is not important. Not that they're not important, but they don't make the significant difference. It really has to do with how one's heart is situated that will grant them access to understand this knowledge. It's an interesting thing. Huh?
In one of the comments, the word was that this is in the hierarchical system seems autocratic.
Yeah.
But then the path of the heart is the ultimate democracy. Because
yes. Right.
Not everybody has intellectual ability, not everybody has wealth, not everybody has charisma, but ultimately everybody has a heart that can love and be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it's the ultimate egalitarianism within Bhakti. So there is this tension that Bhakti is the path of the heart, and there are many statements which state that this is open for everyone. There are no material impediments on this path, and yet there seems to be some kind of almost a power structure that this is the person's authority and this is the person to be followed. So, so there is, with respect to the heart, there is the spontaneous arising of emotion, and there is the cultivated development of emotion. Sometimes we think of love as just something which I fall in love.
Yeah.
And there is that aspect to it, no doubt. But then there is also love which needs to be developed. Like it may be easy to fall in love, but it's not so easy to stay in love. So that requires some cultivation, that requires a conscious effort and discipline. So we could say that it is a path of the heart. In that sense, it's open to everyone. But then the heart's higher emotions they may sometimes arise spontaneously, but many times they need to be cultivated conscientiously. So, and for that purpose, there is a certain process to be followed. So, like, generally, authority figures, there's a lot of hesitation about them. But how they may exploit or abuse. But if we can look at another perspective, there are so many popular movies, especially sports movies, where there are coaches who are really tough with the athletes. But through the tough discipline that the coach insists on that the athlete follow, the athlete becomes fitter and better, and eventually the athlete rises to glory.
Yeah.
So that rigid physical disciplining is tough, but it is meant for the glory of the athlete.
Okay.
So similar, so that's one example which could make this tough disciplining more relatable.
Yeah. There's, and we're about to get to that, like kind of like where the disciples just kind of giving up everything, right? Like what we're about to read is very demanding. But being able, well, that again, that access and the state of one's heart, so much of it has to do with, if I'm going to understand truth, then I'm going to have to let go of the idea that there's no one beyond me, like there's no one better than me, that there's no one superior to me, which can, when our heart is not situated right, we have a very hard time swallowing that. A child may have a hard time understanding the parents are superior to me, and they may shut their heart off, even though the parents have everything to offer to the child. And I think the relationship between the jiva and the ishvara, between the soul and the supreme, so much of it has to do with the willingness to accept one's constitution, to be open to that. That in one sense I'm very small and God is very great. Can I accept that? If I'm not willing to accept that, then the other yoga paths can take me so far. I can understand I'm eternal, for instance. I can let go of material things, but I can't enter into the realm of divine love until I accept who I am and who God is. And so that's, in order to pass through that door or that gate of confidentiality, there has to be some willingness, some acceptance. All of one's envy or animosity has to be let go, that there's another that I submit to, even through love. So now we hear about how that same relationship is reflected in the relationship between the guru and the disciple, where there's submission, of course, which is a terrifying idea, I think, to many of us. So Prabhupada writes here, to practice bhakti yoga, one must first accept a bona fide spiritual master. Srila Rupa Goswami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, advises, and this is very fundamental to the practice of bhakti here, these texts that we're about to read. He says, one's first duty is to accept, he quotes Guru Padashraya Tasmat. These are the first steps in the practice of bhakti as laid out by Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada summarizes them next. He says, one's first duty is to accept a bona fide spiritual master, Guru Padashraya, taking the shelter at the feet of the Guru. The student or disciple should be very inquisitive. Now, this is important, huh? And there's submission, but that submission is with inquiry. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, actually, that whole focus on inquiry is indicative that the individuality is not being suppressed or rejected, because it is that person who has to analyze, to understand. So often, the way I put it is, the guru is the ultimate resource for our intelligence. The guru is not someone to whom we outsource our intelligence. So
he in a sense ignites the intelligence, or
yes, awakens, activates our intelligence.
Activates. Yeah.
It's quite often when there's indoctrination, it's like outsourcing the intelligence. Okay, I know nothing, therefore you make all decisions for me. No, that's not the point. I don't know enough, so you guide me. But
How
the
I
idea is
can know.
how I can know.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the disciple, the student is made whole by the guru. This disciple becomes a more integrated, more functional, more put together individual. So it's that. So that is the key. One of the keys of a good teacher, you could say, is that the teacher is trying to make themselves redundant for the student. And the student never feels that the teacher is redundant. But the teacher is trying to educate the student in such a way that the student can make decisions without the presence of the teacher also.
Okay.
So if we see
Yeah.
Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna could have just told Arjuna, fight.
Right.
You could say that Krishna could have said, I am God, obey me, fight. 6 words, Bhagavad Gita over. But Krishna goes through a whole process of ethical reasoning. And the whole point of philosophical analysis in the Gita is to ground and guide its ethical reasoning. But the point is, Krishna is equipping Arjuna to think and make decisions for himself.
Okay.
So that's how the system is meant to be empowering. It is meant to be more like power transferring rather than power hoarding.
Yeah.
The guru is meant to empower the disciple. And that's I think so that the part of inquiry is for that purpose. So it's not just that I obey you, but rather you help me to make sense of why I am being told to do this.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, okay, this is great. So we, in the earlier part of the commentary, Prabhupada spoke to the confidentiality of divine love, the confidentiality of bhakti. Now we're hearing about the method of entry, right? If it's confidential, if not everybody is able to pass through the gate. Now we're hearing about how one does. It begins with connection with the master, right? Connection with someone further advanced on this, through whom, as you're saying, one can inquire, and through the answers, one's own ability to understand becomes activated. And what we're about to hear is this: there's inquiry is definitely there, but there's more than inquiry. This is, of course, coming straight out of Bhagavad Gita, text 434, right? That it mentions you inquire from the guru. What is it? Tadviti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. That you inquire, but you also serve, because again, it's the state of heart that allows the entry. It's not merely the information, but it's the state of heart in which the information rests, or in which it is rooted. That the real activation takes place. So now we'll hear a bit about that. And this is a very traditional model, right? We're going to hear about a connection between guru and disciple that's very one-on-one, like where the two are living together. So let's hear, as it says, that they should be very eager, the disciple should be very eager to know the complete truth about Sanatan Dharma. That they should be very inquisitive, they should be eager to know the complete truth. The words Guru Shrushaya mean that one should personally serve the spiritual master. How so? By giving him bodily comforts, helping him in bathing, dressing, sleeping, eating, and so on. And now that, I think immediately to some people, this may sound very strange, but first of all, this is in the context of India. Like how do you help someone bathe? You go and you get the water for them, right? Like you got to go to the well or go to the river and load up a bucket full of heavy water, and you bring it to them, so that they don't have to go and do that themselves. So you don't, wake up early in the morning, go out in the cold, pump a thing full of water, go to a river, and then carry that all the way back to the house of the guru. Rather than he have to do that himself, you do that for him. How do you help him dress? you wash his clothes, you wash them, you dry them, you fold them, with devotion, So it's saying that, again, helping them, assisting them in bathing and dressing and sleeping and eating. You prepare the meals, you serve the meals. He says this is called Guru Shushrushanam. A disciple should serve the spiritual master as a menial servant. And whatever that idea, I lived that. I really, in my own life, I really had the opportunity to live that. And what it does, I can tell you for sure, what it does. It's not that every disciple will have the opportunity to live that life. Somehow the principle of that has to be alive in the connection between guru and disciple. But I literally lived that. I would go and fetch the water. I would prepare the meals and serve the meals. I would fold the laundry and carry the bags and do so many menial services like this. And I can tell you for sure that what it does is it gets you entirely out of the mentality of seeking one's own comforts in life, which is kind of what a lot of us live in 24/7. It kind of pulls you out of a world of selfishness and puts you into a world where you're constantly giving, and as you said, if one has gradually built up that relationship of faith and relationship of love, then it comes naturally. It comes happily, but it also can be very challenging to one's independent, to one's false sense of independence, or to one's false need for independence or false need for external comforts. It's kind of like, sometimes I'm around, say, your god brother, or your god brothers that are personally serving your guru, right? Like Radhanath Swami, there'll be his cook, some people that cook for him or that carry out different responsibilities for him. They're kind of always on call. Sometimes literally they just sit outside the door of the guru, and at any moment they're called upon. Hey, take care of this, take care of that. And they really don't have their own schedule. They don't say, well, today I think I'll do this and then I'll do that. No, they're kind of on the schedule of another person 24/7. I remember living that life myself. And although it's very demanding, it's somehow very purifying. It puts you in a state of awareness that's very different than that we normally walk around with. There's a connection between that and one's ability to receive this knowledge. Even you could receive the same instruction and it won't take root in the same way it'll take root in the heart of one who's given up a false sense of independence.
You just use the word on call.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was just staying with, I'm traveling, I was staying with different people. So I was staying with a devotee who's a doctor.
Okay.
So he told me that during his internship, he would be constantly on call. And that means 24 hours a day, anytime you get a call.
Yeah.
And you immediately have to go. You have to keep the phone on and next to you all the time, and you have to go. So he said that was an extremely tough period. But he was telling me that prepared me for my life as a medical professional. Now I have much more regulated hours, but I'm ready, I'm alert. So if an emergency comes up, so in one sense, that life of utterly giving oneself for something beyond oneself, it can be very demanding, but it can also be very, very uplifting. That whole, because it's just like another point when you mentioned about doctors in India are not very comfortable being questioned. That's one side of it. But the other side is like I have been in the Middle East, and a lot of Indian doctors are there in the Middle East and other parts of the world also. India also has to some extent a flourishing healthcare industry now, where people from the West go there. So the one thing is they accept this fact that doctors who come out of that Indian system, they are tough in the sense that they can handle stress. They can do the work. So it's a system which actually is demanding, but it's rewarding. So that close service to the guru, that actually, while it is, as I said, there's one's own schedule, but that actually, if you consider, that's like the fire in which the soul is put, and that gold, the spirituality comes out, and all that is apart from the soul spirituality, all the impurities, all the conditionings, they start melting away.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's the combination. It's saying one must be inquisitive, and then you serve like this. You're inquisitive, and you give up your selfishness. You live for others. And that combination is the two rubbing against each other, the two connecting. Just like sometimes you have like you go to the hardware store and they have these different kind of epoxies, different kind of like really strong glues, and you can see it has like two tubes that are together, and each one has a different ingredient. And then when you push on you can't put them together, otherwise they'll turn hard, and they'll never come out of the tube. So you push the tube and they both come out at the same time and mix, and then you have this super strong epoxy. When the two ingredients are brought together, it becomes strong. And similarly, it's what's being said in Bhagavad Gita in text 434, what Prabhupada, I would say he's alluding to here. Certainly he's speaking directly to Rupa Goswami's instructions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it feels also that he's alluding to text 434 in the Gita, is that what Krishna is teaching is that the real knowledge is confidential. Even if someone teaches it to you, it doesn't necessarily take root, and you don't understand it, and it doesn't activate without the right state of heart. And that right state of heart is cultivated through service. And granted, if you're serving someone who's unethical, if you're serving someone who hasn't passed through this process themselves and developed selflessness themselves, then certainly there's going to be potential for exploitation or for some sort of fraud, in this process. But if that person is deeply selfless, and if this is taking place in a context of real authenticity, then the combination of your inquiry and you're receiving those instructions, it'll be so much aided by the state of your heart, when the state of your heart has been purified through selflessness, and not just selflessness speaking of it, but selflessness demonstrated through personal sacrifice. And what to speak of that personal sacrifice is done in a very personal way, with great care and sensitivity. At the beginning of the Bhagavatam, we hear Sutta Goswami is chosen by all the sages of Naimisharanya to be the most capable of interpreting all the different teachings from these texts and providing the answers that they were seeking. And they speak to his qualification, right? What is the Saumya? Because you are the gentle disciple of your gurus, you've been blessed by them to be able to understand all these teachings. So this is key. It's not just learning. It's not academic. It's not merely academic. There's an academic aspect to it, but it's not, the word that you used again was, it's not activated in any mind, in any heart. That heart has to be situated right with humility, with selflessness, with non-enviousness, in order for it to take root.
Yes, one last point you mentioned about the Indian-West difference, or East-West difference. Wherever there is a hierarchy of any kind, I stayed in India in one of the most conservative ashrams for almost 10 years.
Yes.
Then I started coming to the West. This is one thing which struck me, that in the West, especially in America, whenever there is a hierarchy, the default assumption or the first reaction is it's got through power, it's got through exploitation, it's basically autocracy.
Yes.
But in the Eastern way of looking at things, if somebody is at the top of a hierarchy, it's more like the default assumption is that person has got there through proficiency, through
Yes.
competence.
Yeah.
So
Either one could be right or wrong, but we
yeah,
both
exactly.
are quick to assume.
Yeah. So it's almost like in the West, it is doubt till faith is earned.
Yes.
So rather it is have faith till doubt is triggered.
Right.
So it's slightly different. But the principle is that hierarchy is based on dominance or exploitation, autocracy. Hierarchy based on autocracy is definitely harmful. But here, when the language of hierarchy is talked about, it's implicit that hierarchy is based on proficiency. The
Right.
guru is embodying selflessness. And therefore, when that selfless service is inspired in the disciple, in the student by that.
You hit the nail on the head right there. That's perfect. Thank you for that. As I said yesterday, you have a very excellent engineering mind, and you're always able to categorize things very nicely. Thank you for that, Prabhu. Mara, do we have any takeaways for today?
We do. Accepting and serving the guru is the secret to success.
Okay.
Education, not indoctrination. How to think, not what to think.
Very good.
Let the guru disciple relationship develop gradually, step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Open the door of confidential knowledge.
Very good. That's what we want to do.
We need a coach to rise to glory.
Okay. Did you have how were your coaches when you were back in field hockey? Coaches.
I had great coaches. I loved my coaches.
See that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I accept that God is greater than me?
I try. Even though I'm so small, I have trouble with it.
Let the guru guide and activate intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Be on call as a menial servant 24/7 to melt away impurity and selfishness.
Okay.
Cultivate the right state of heart to activate the epoxy.
Mm-hmm.
And fetch water with devotion.
Okay. There we go. Fetch water. Chaitanya Charan, it was wonderful having you here for these couple days. I was wondering if I might be able to bring you back someday next week. Is that a possibility?
Sure, bro. I'll be happy to come.
Okay, maybe Tuesday, if you're free.
Yeah.
Let's see. We'll check.
Yeah.
But always a joy to have you here, Prabhu. It's really helpful for us. People can search for you. Google spiritual scientist Chaitanya Charan. Find his Gita Daily offerings and so many recordings and classes and podcasts he's done himself. They're all super valuable. I encourage you to check them out. Thank you, Prabhu. Mara, any news from Raghunath out there?
No, he had a great program last night in San Diego.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay. I'm sure he's doing his thing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Everybody listening on the podcast platforms, thank you for tuning in. And no show tomorrow, but we will be back on Sunday for a very special show. Thank you all so much. It's a beautiful day for a beautiful day. And let the magic continue.